You're listening to The Brian Lira Show, celebrating 25 years in 25 days. I'm Carolita Johnson, the New Yorker cartoonist, calling from my studio in Inwood, New York City. Thanks.
And yes, for 2007 in our anniversary series, if you are familiar with the song you are now hearing, you will know it's the theme song to Mad Men, which made its debut in 2007 and will wrap up its final season next year. And whether you want to call it an official golden age of television or not, around the midpoint of the decade, the last decade, there was a lot of great TV out there. Besides Mad Men, The Wire was in its fourth and fifth seasons. Friday Night Lights was just beginning. The Sopranos ended that year. People were already saying that heralded a new age. Plus, the way we watch TV was changing dramatically. 2007 was the year that Netflix started allowing us to stream Internet content at home in the TV world. My next guest is the writer, director, producer, and creator of Mad Men, and he also wrote on The Sopranos. He is Matthew Weiner. Hey, Matthew, welcome to WNYC. So
great to be here, Brian. I'm glad.
And we can even take a few Mad Men questions on the phone if you want to call in and talk to Matthew Weiner today. 212-433-WNYC, 433-9692. Now, I heard somewhere that Mad Men theme was something you heard on a public radio station as one of those interstitial.
Absolutely
yes?
true.
Yes?
I actually think that David Chase heard the Sopranos theme on Morning Becomes Eclectic.
Really?
But so that was why I'm a public radio listener and supporter, and we have two stations in Los Angeles. I don't remember which one it was on, but I was listening to Marketplace. And, you're talking about Netflix streaming starting after we came on the air. There was no Twitter. There was no iPhone. There was no iPad. I mean, this is only 7 years ago. And finding out what that song was that I heard was a huge pain in the butt.
Wow.
But my assistant at the time, who actually eventually became a writer on Breaking Bad, Jenny Hutchins, found it for me, tracked it down.
And what about that music said 1960s ad agency to you?
Well, I liked we were already doing the animation for the opening, and I was trying to find the right song for it, and I was looking for something that kind of had a slightly historic feeling on it, but the whole vibe of the opening credits was that it was computerized animation, but it looked like old title sequence, an old title sequence. So we wanted to sort of mix the two things. So I was looking for something kind of modern, old-fashioned, and I also loved that it had the sound that sounded like falling to me. But when I heard it, I just assumed it was from a French movie or something, which is right in my sweet spot.
So we've got this whole confection of a concept that we're in a golden age of TV. But we read that just a few weeks ago at a Vanity Fair New Establishment Summit, you said that you don't believe in this notion and that it's just a marketing term. Is that your position?
The Sopranos definitely changed the focus on television because it was artistically and commercially successful and superior to almost every other kind of entertainment out there. It suggested that a TV viewer would watch every episode, which was not the prevailing belief at that time. It suggested that people would stop whatever they were doing to watch it. It attracted incredible actors, many of whom were not famous when it started. And it was even though it was a limited audience on HBO, it was this, as I said, international commercial success. So that definitely changed everything. And certainly made Mad Men possible. I mean, AMC was definitely interested in me because I worked on that show and in this script, which I wrote actually the year that The Sopranos came out. Because of that. But I also feel like, something about this golden age thing, it just irritates me because I'm a student of history and there was a time, just growing up, Mary Tyler Moore and MASH were on the air at the same time. And, there's always great TV and there's always crappy TV. And, growing up and hearing people say, well, I only watch Masterpiece Theater and The Muppets. That was like, when I remember, I was like, there was good TV on. And TV has its own thing, which is especially notable now because it used to be that you watched it every week. and that sustenance and that familiarity. Anybody who's ever had a cold and gotten into some sitcom that they never heard of before, and like, those are my friends, I'm going to visit them.
Yes, for the rest of the run of whatever series that was. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, but The Sopranos was the thing that really sustained the kind of soap opera, like continuing storyline thing, and that's what I think you're seeing in TV now.
And people had already started to binge watch seasons of shows on DVD because that technology was out there, and then they were able to record shows on DVR and do that at home without even buying the discs, and sometimes 2 or 3 episodes or 6 or 7 at a time. And people say that led to more complex plots that could stretch out and didn't have to wrap up at the end of each episode, and long character studies, and some of this, artistic success meets commercial success. Do you feel empowered by that to create deeper storylines?
I totally take issue with that. I think that, serialized television, no one has a longer running storyline than General Hospital. I mean, it's really about, do you like the characters and can you stay with them? The complexity of a story has nothing to do with the format it's in. And if anything, The Sopranos, just take the first season of The Sopranos, which is kind of the defining moment for this whole whatever's happened since then, and you just take the storyline over the course of the season, it's a 13-hour story. That in itself was a breakthrough, but it didn't. Every single one of those episodes stands alone as a movie, and that was the goal of David. And for me, I don't know. I mean, it's not like I don't. Whenever the form is nothing has changed. That's my philosophy. Nothing has changed except for the audience's appetite, and the binge watching thing in a way makes it worse in terms of storyline, because I think when you don't have a week to ruminate and you don't have a chance to watch it over again and let it sit with you, especially a show like ours that doesn't have a lot of plot, that the events are not sustainable, and you have to keep upping the ante for a binge watcher in a way to keep it explosive. I don't, for me, I never wanted the story to become that exaggerated.
So here's the one clip from Mad Men that we pulled for this conversation, which my producer thought exemplifies just the thing you're saying doesn't exist. So you can completely shoot this down.
No, all right.
Through Don Draper breaking down and actually telling the truth about his childhood at work, at a pitch meeting, in front of potential clients, and it only took him years to get to this point.
I was an orphan. I grew up in Pennsylvania in a whorehouse. I read about Milton Hershey and his school in Coronet magazine or some other crap the girls left by the toilet. And I read that some orphans had a different life there. I could picture it. I dreamt of it. Of being wanted. Because the woman who was forced to raise me would look at me every day like she hoped I would disappear. Closest I got to feeling wanted was from a girl who made me go through her John's pockets while they screwed. If I collected more than $1, she'd buy me a Hershey bar. And I would eat it alone in my room with great ceremony. Feeling like a normal kid.
Pretty dramatic climax in the, history of the whole Mad Men series. What would you say, anything you would say about that moment?
I think the moment depends on you knowing the whole show. And that's what I found was the difference about the way TV was being watched, which is that the networks had traditionally thought that a loyal viewer watched 6 episodes. You couldn't have a story arc unless you were a soap opera, and then you had to repeat everything over and over again. And the idea that we could pay something off that had happened 6 years ago, 7 actually in the calendar, was an incredibly gratifying moment. Now, it might have never happened that Don got to that point, but the fact that I got to do the show that long, I felt that was We've gone out of our way on the show to tell the ages of our characters, which a lot of times they don't on shows. They just sort of exist in a nebulous, permanent age. And I think that as Don got older, we got to take advantage of where he was in his life, and that's why you get to tell that, come clean in that dramatic fashion.
And until we started this conversation, I would have said, see, that's an example of the way people can watch television these days, making a 7-year leap like that possible.
You're
until
right.
You said, but look at General Hospital.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it's interesting to me that I try and make it. There was a thing that used to be said in the writers' rooms at the network TV, which is like, Timmy. They would talk about Timmy, who was the idiot viewer, and Timmy doesn't like math, and Timmy won't remember that, and Timmy didn't see last week. And once The Sopranos was on, and people weren't watching 6 episodes, and you didn't have to redo the pilot every single week. That was the edict at the time when I started in television, like do the pilot every week. And actually, Seinfeld had this great continuing reference thing. You knew if Jerry, you could get a laugh by season 4 if someone just held a Snapple. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. That kind of universe. And the Simpsons are they have a complete universe. So that sort of, I guess, the attentiveness to the audience. I mean, now with all of this technology, the role that entertainment plays in our lives, and what we get for free and what we pay for, and our tolerance for the advertising that goes with it, and all this that's what's really changed, I think, in this TV universe.
Were you into 60s history that you decided to do, to set the show the way it was?
I was into 50s history, and I really, on some level, besides being a man who was about the same age as Don when I wrote the script, which is really what it's about, and trying to tell an internal story, which is also what it's about. Like, it's not necessarily, it confounds the rules of cinema to basically tell a psychological story inside somebody's head. You're taught that that's impossible. And I thought, he's a regular person, not too many guns, not too much, but can I make this feel like real life? Can I make it feel like what happens when, like, you walk out of your office and go into the bathroom and close the door and you're just like you're a different person. But the 50s part of it was really about imagining whatever the cliche of the 60s was that had been handed down to me. I'm from the 80s, so that generation was really on top of us and talking about how great it was as they gave up their idealism for loads of cash in the 80s.
And we have 30 seconds
Oh, I'm
left.
sorry.
No.
That's the short answer.
That's a great answer. And I'm just curious if the show is going to end because the story has to end. Like Seinfeld couldn't have gone on forever with those people being single as they got older and older. Mm-hmm. Is there something about Mad Men that makes it have to end?
Well, you want to. The machinery that tells the story, the unexpected nature of the story, is going to get worn out. And there's so much guessing. But you know what? Honestly, I just wanted to quit while we were ahead.
And they certainly are ahead. As Mad Men is about to end, we will leave it there. We've been delighted to have Matthew Weiner, writer, director, producer, and creator of Mad Men. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you, and happy anniversary.
Thanks a lot.